Hello, and welcome to this live stream for World Autism Day 2020. I've stolen this quote from my colleague Adam Walton, and not just is it Autism Acceptance Day, but as far as Adam and a lot of other people are concerned, it's a whole month that we get to celebrate all things autism. We are coming straight to you live from our living rooms, our dining rooms, and I'm sure that you're doing the right thing staying at home. And so you are also at home in your living room. So we very much have a captive audience today. We've all tried to very rapidly learn some new technology so that we can bring you a live stream and be as seamless as possible. I'd like to welcome everyone today to this virtual seminar. Thank the speakers who have come together on a very short notice, and MySport Live and the captioning experts as well, who are typing away around 200 words per minute and making it all work for us. Within the sport and recreation community, we've had a lot of things to celebrate as it relates to autism, but of course, we still have a lot to do. Together, we're increasing athletic opportunities like swimming, cycling, tennis, and of course, one of our favorites across Victoria is AFL. We are seeing more and more sensory spaces at places like Marvel Stadium being led by St. Kilda Saints, MCG led by the Cats, at MCG by the Hawthorn Hawks, Cardinia Park and the Cats have a beautiful sensory room, and Amy Park Stadium for soccer, so fans can enjoy the games. Of course, sport and recreation is more than just watching and playing sport. It's also working and enjoying the economic advantages that sport offers. And in Victoria, we're very lucky to have organizations like VU Polytechnic, Triathlon Victoria, Monash Council, Gymnastics Victoria, and many, many more who are leading the way in employment opportunities for people with autism. One of my favorite moments of this past few months has been that Andre, who was meant to do a placement with us at Sport and Recreation Victoria, couldn't do his placement with us because he had received a job offer from Cricket Australia. It's a great reason not to do placement when you're getting a paid job. Today will be challenging to strike the right tone between celebrating everything that we've achieved, the things that we look forward to, while also recognizing the challenges that we face, the things that we were expecting to do over the next few weeks, and of course, recognizing the anxiety and uncertainty that COVID-19 and novel coronavirus has created for many of us. While this tone will be challenging to strike, we will do our best to celebrate while recognizing the things that we can do at home. I want to take this opportunity to ask you to be comfortable. Unlike some seminars where you're sitting in an uncomfortable chair and you have to sit for a long time, you can't leave in between presentations, you can't take phone calls and texts. You are most likely at home and you can take phone calls, you can have a chat, you can introduce yourself to the person next to you, or maybe the pet next to you, and you can come and go, make coffee. If you don't like the catering, please don't complain to us about it. This is live streamed and recorded, and we have two websites, platforms that you can ask questions from. We have AAA Play Facebook, and we have DSR TV. We ask that you keep everything respectful, but please do feel free to interact, make comments, and talk to each other. We aim to achieve a psychologically safe environment where questions can be asked, and I'm sure that questions of curiosity will come from a place where you desire to learn. Feel free to ask questions in the chat boxes, but if there's any questions that you would like to ask more privately, you can email me, sean.stevenson@sport.vic.gov.au. And I'll do my best to monitor the questions as they come in via email, as well as the other two platforms. very lucky and pleased to have one of the first guests, Ron Prasad, with us today, who will be completing the Acknowledgement of Country. Ron is a proud Aboriginal man, and his profession is within Family Safety Victoria, as well as he's a social worker. He's a keen mental health advocate, and he leads an anti-bullying campaign. And I thought that Ron is an excellent fit for today to provide the welcome to the Acknowledgement of Country. So I'd like to hand over to Ron.
Thanks, Sean, and good morning. Thank you for having me on this. So let's just take a moment to do an acknowledgement of country. Let's acknowledge that this live event is being held on traditional country. We pay our respect to Aboriginal people of whichever land you're on at the moment, their culture and their customs within Australia. To any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who are with us today on this live event, we extend our warm welcome to you. To non-Indigenous people, we also extend a very warm welcome to you. And a question that I get asked often is, why do we do an acknowledgement of country? And there are many reasons. If you ask many different people, you'll get many different responses. My belief is that it's important to do an acknowledgement of country because it reminds us that in this country, Australia, Indigenous culture is still alive, it's still important. So let's ask the spirit of the land to be with us as we go through this live event today. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you, Ron. I think that is a very important acknowledgement to do today as we're meeting far and wide. I've seen the registrations come in. There's definitely people joining us from Western Australia. There are people from Queensland. There could be some people joining from overseas, as it's free and available to anyone. And of course, we have a lot of people here in Victoria. I think one of the most powerful things that I've heard attending conferences and attending meetings and hearing the welcome to country is that previously, when you're going on to different Aboriginal land, you couldn't speak or use any of the resources. You couldn't take anything from the land or have any of the knowledge until you were welcomed onto the country by a local person. And often they would welcome you with a gum leaf. And that gum leaf was your passport to trade resources and to trade information. And as a community, sharing more stories. I think what we're trying to achieve today is very similar. None of us have the answer for everything. We don't know all the answers to what we're going through currently. None of us alone have the answers to how to have more athletic participation for people with autism. We alone don't know how to increase spectator participation, and alone we can't increase economic inclusion for people with autism. But together, as we come together and we share information, I'm confident that we will get a few steps closer to achieving our goals together as a community. If you've heard me speak before, you might hear me say that Victoria is the place to be. I love the old license plate, and I think that we're very lucky to have incredible universities here in Victoria leading the way in research related to autism. And not just they are world-leading universities that we have here with University of Melbourne, La Trobe University, and Deakin University, amongst some of the best in the world. I've been privileged to work with hundreds of people who are passionate about the value of sport and recreation for people with autism across Victoria. And most importantly, I think we are lucky to have a long history of autistic self-advocates and families who have led the way to create greater inclusion. They have certainly fought the fight for and have built a strong foundation for inclusion on which we are enjoying today. I've attended a lot of conferences over my time, and they usually feature famous people and professors who have written books. They fly in and they fly out. We're lucky in Victoria to have a lot of home-based talent we can rely on. Today, I want to recognize and thank some of the incredible autistic people and organizations who have contributed to the strong foundation that we can now build on. Amaze, of course, was founded by a group of 4 moms back in the 50s. Mansfield Statewide Autism Services as well was founded by a mom. Football Integration Development Association was founded in 1988 by a group of parents when I believe the Kew cottages were closing down. They were looking for physical activity and sport. The ICANN network is a group of incredible autistic advocates who are really leading the way and sharing their experiences. And we have more and more growing physical activity and sport related organizations like AAA Sport Ballarat, Snap Sports, Furbank All-Stars, Starfish Nippers, to name a few. That opportunity to learn from parents and individual experiences in books such as Smiling at Shadows, which is a Victorian experience as it relates to autism. And of course, we have many people who have been leading this self-advocacy journey since the 70s and 80s and continue to do so today with people like Wen Lawson, Donna Williams, and Tony Langdon. Tony has actually just appeared in a little tidbit on AAA Play in his ambassador role, and he's shared how he's staying connected socially during these times of physical distancing, going back to the old-fashioned shortwave radio. And Tony is also an excellent athlete in his own right. Over the last week, I thought a lot about how we would strike this balance between COVID-19, the impact that it's having on people. I think 6 weeks ago, like everyone else, we were planning on looking forward to winter sports. We were looking forward to AFL Women's Grand Final. We're looking forward to AFL Wheelchair starting. We're looking forward to a few more summery days to go to the beach and swim. But we find ourselves in a very different spot than what we had predicted. It's important that today you remember that we're celebrating and we're having a bit of fun. And for the most up-to-date and important information nationally, you should go to the Department of Health. And in Victoria, you should go to the Department of Health and Human Services. If you're looking to have a little bit of fun, you're looking to stay connected, you're looking to give some things a new try and to give it a go, then AAA Play have an excellent resource tab where they're collating a lot of different opportunities, including a free social story from Autism Swim, a Gymnastics Victoria Aerobase program, which has been freely available across Australia, and the Netball Victoria NetFit program, to name a few. I'd like to take a moment just quickly to say how we all got here within Sport and Recreation Victoria, and to thank everyone who submitted during the inquiry into the Victorian Parliamentary Inquiry into the provision of services for people with autism. That inquiry found that the Access All Abilities program, which supports over 100 state sporting associations and recreation bodies to be more inclusive of people, was working very well. We're very lucky to have received additional funding to boost a focus on supporting people with autism. And over the past year, in the first year, we had 17 projects. And this past year, we've had 9 projects. These 9 projects have been designed to focus on building the blocks of physical literacy, spanning the spectrum of skills and environments. Swimming and cycling can be learned at a very early age. And the more people progress, we can introduce more strategy and we can increase theory of mind by adding in more and more game planning and planning together. Special Olympics have created 2 inclusion modules, which are freely available to anyone in the world. There's one module for people with intellectual disability and how to include people with intellectual disability in sport and physical activity. And there's another one specific to autism. The autism module features a survey at the end. And so please complete the survey to inform the design and content of future modules as we go forward. I don't want to give too many facts and figures today, as it is more about the practical strategies and knowledge to be shared from people like Elise, Kelly, Elle, and Julia, who you'll soon hear from. However, I do want to say to any coaches or PE teachers out there listening today that it is rare that someone who has autism as their only diagnosis. Sleep disorders, bullying, and anxiety are all things that can impact on how well a person can follow instructions in a class. A child rocking up to Auskick on a Saturday morning might be very different to that same child rocking up to the same Auskick program on a Wednesday after a full day of school. While this can be challenging, we also know the benefits of physical activity and how important physical activity is to support things like sleep and anxiety. For people with a dual diagnosis such as autism and cerebral palsy, exercise such as cycling can be very important to increase muscle tone and gross motor skills. Physical activity isn't the answer to everything, but we know that it certainly plays an important role in all of our lives, including people with autism at any age, anywhere on the spectrum. We're very lucky to have several speakers. We're 4 speakers today, starting with Kelly Tate, who is the founder of AAA Sport Ballarat. She's a parent of a son with autism, and she created AAA Sport Ballarat. Like many parents, I believe it was going to the first Auskick Center. There was probably 50 children running around all at the same time, and it was very overwhelming, not just for Kelly's son, but for her as well as a parent. Thankfully, we have a lot of parents like Kelly who see an opportunity for improvement, and we're lucky to have Kelly with us today to share her experiences of creating AAA Sports Ballarat and then branching into things like managing the Victoria Vikings cricket team, coaching the AFL blind team for the Bulldogs, and a host of other initiatives. Please welcome Kelly Tate.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Sean. You always make me sound so amazing. So thank you for that. I'm really excited to be a part of this today. And unfortunately, we were going to do a live event in the community, but due to everything that's going on in the world at the moment, this is our next option. So I think so far, so good. And thank you to all of you for taking the time to tune in and to just get some more knowledge on what it means to play sport with autism. So I'm going to go through a bit of a presentation. So just bear with me while I get it up on the screen here because my computer skills aren't that amazing. And there we go. So my name is Kelly, and I am the mother of an incredible 8-year-old boy, Cooper, who is autistic, and you can see Cooper here in this main picture. Our days are filled with plenty of challenges. Cooper's lack of social awareness and his rigid and his inflexible thinking. His sensory sensitivities affect nearly every single situation that we find ourselves in. But to be honest, the good outweigh the bad these days due to a lot of hard work and a lot of therapy. Pre-diagnosis, I probably couldn't have said the same thing. Life was really tough for us. Cooper was only 3. And I could see he was struggling with the world around him, that he couldn't quite make sense of everything. I felt really trapped and I felt really isolated from the world. I couldn't take him out into public forums. He would scream and cry, and it was a really difficult time. He'd also throw himself into walls and into furniture and into me constantly. And this was all him trying to regulate the feelings that he was having in his little body. But because we didn't know that he had autism at that point, I wasn't sure how to help him either. So it was a really tough time for us, and probably a time that I think a lot of you can relate to One night we decided for our own mental health to head around to our local football oval and to just have a kick of the football as a family. Now, this probably was more for our benefit as adults rather than for Cooper's benefit, but we just needed to get out of the house. What we found when we got to that oval was Cooper took to that football straight away. He turned into a completely different kid. I don't see him laugh and actually enjoy activities very often, but on this night, he was laughing, he was enjoying what he was doing. And there was this amazing sense of calm come over him, which was really eye-opening for us. He was tackling, he was dodging, he was kicking, we were laughing. It was a really wonderful experience, and it was a really enjoyable family time for us. But on the way home, I noticed just how calm he was. And it was just such a contrast to the little boy that we had walked that oval with. So it got me thinking that this might be really good therapy for Coop. Maybe some physical exercise, doing kicking, running would be really good for him. So I contacted AFL Goldfields, our local AFL affiliate, and asked if they had an All Abilities program running in the Ballarat region. They didn't at that time, and were swift to ask me if I'd mind starting one. And so that's sort of where AAA Sport was born, I guess you'd say. So AAA Sport Ballarat is a not-for-profit organisation that provides cricket, AFL, soccer to children of all abilities. We aim to provide maximum inclusion, so one-on-one coaching, and we do that through engaging the local Ballarat Grammar School, who send about 20 to 30 children out every Sunday morning to complete community-based service hours and give the participants in my program one-on-one support. It's been such a beautiful partnership, and it's really helped the kids to become more successful in what they're learning. We use adaptive coaching techniques and modified equipment to suit all the different abilities that we see come through our program. And we also try to promote an environment that's fun and full of friendship for these kids. The power of an inclusive environment is that it develops confidence in children and in adults. It provides them a safe place to learn. It helps to build their social awareness of other children, volunteers, adults. It raises awareness in our community about the abilities of these children. It gives them the opportunity to practice turn taking and follow rules. And look, to be honest, sport just offers so many adaptation methods that it really can suit everybody. So when we talk about engaging children in sport at home, you know, quite often autistic children aren't really keen to do sport. We all know that. So some great ways to engage beginners at home are to make it fun and engaging, keep it really simple, and make it achievable. We don't want to set goals for them that are going to be too hard, because if it's too hard, they're not going to do it. So we slowly progress through those goals. So keep it really simple. Use their interests to engage them. So if they're interested in trains or dinosaurs, then incorporate trains and dinosaurs into what you're teaching them so that they're more likely to be engaged. Set a small amount of time to play and then give them a break. So we don't want them doing 30 minutes of sport and absolutely hating every minute of it. Rather set them 5 minutes, really enjoy the activity, have a break, and then you can do another 5 minutes, 10 minutes in the afternoon and build a love for it rather than, you know, really overwhelming them. Use really simple language and instructions. We don't want to use too many words. Make sure that you're demonstrating and showing the activity. These guys are real visual learners, so you will have far more success if you're visually showing them how you want them to complete the task. Offer some different reinforcements. So maybe use a bump pad and let them crash into it. You know, give them other ways to engage in sport that aren't so traditional. Make it a part of your daily schedule. So build sport into your daily routine. And you'll see this picture here is the visual schedule I use for my children at home. Now, Cooper doesn't use a daily schedule every day, but under times of stress, like it is at the moment with us being stuck at home and the kids don't understand what's going on, we've resorted back to the basics, and we're now using the visual schedule to help him feel more normal and keep him on track. Use a social story to explain the skill and the activity that you want to learn, and use a time timer to keep participants on track. Let the participants help to design what the activity looks like. If they've got a vested interest in what you're wanting them to do, they're going to be far more likely to give it a go. And make it all about fun and engagement. So some sporting activities that you can modify at home, and these are just a few little ideas for you guys to try something new at home while we've got the opportunity. Volleyball's a great one. You can use a string in the lounge room, start with a really soft ball or even a few pairs of socks rolled up, and then progress to outside with the string between the fence and a harder ball once you develop those basics. Hockey's another one. So start with maybe a tennis racket sitting on the ground, use a larger, softer ball, and then progress to a smaller, harder ball using laundry baskets as goals. When it comes to AFL football, start with rolling the footy to each other. Most of us have got a footy at home. There wouldn't be too many families who don't, I would think, especially in Victoria. So start by rolling the footy to each other, get them used to the shape of the ball. You know, it's a really different shape, so get them used to that. Play a game throwing the ball to each other rather than kicking, and practice going from one end of the goals to the other. Then maybe progress to a small odds kick size football and some kicking. With cricket, start with a larger, softer ball. If you don't have a cricket bat, maybe use a tennis racket with a larger head on it. If bowling's too difficult, roll it down. You don't need to be teaching bowling straight off. We just want to get them those basic skills to get them started. In terms of basketball, you can use washing baskets as goals and a lighter, softer ball to practice the bouncing with, and then progress to a heavier ball once they get the hang of that. Another great activity we like to do a lot at home is kids yoga. So YouTube is full of awesome kids yoga videos, and we're big fans here of Cosmic Kids. So it's another way to get kids interested and active. Dance videos, we do a lot of filming of the kids doing dance videos in the lounge room, and then I play it back to them. When you're playing it back to them, they're more likely to go, oh, I can do something more next time, and they become more and more focused on seeing what the next outcome's going to be. So I find this a really great way to get their heart rate up and get them involved in some fun activity. And one of our ultimate favourites here at home with my kids is an obstacle course of any sort. We can use cones, you can use chairs, you can use washing baskets, whatever you've got laying around the house. Create an obstacle course. I play music, and when the music stops, the kids have to run to one of the obstacles and stop at that obstacle. And at each obstacle, I have an activity. So they may have to do 5-star jumps at that obstacle, or they may need to do a crab claw walk through the obstacle course, or you can make up any sort of activity that you like. If they're interested in trains, you could get them chugging through the course like a train, or you could have them reversing and using the beep beep sound like a big lorry through the course. So use their interest to engage them in that a little bit more. They're just a few. There's obviously a heap more sports at home. 10-pin bowling's another one that comes to mind for me. We can set up anything amongst the kids' toys and have a ball and roll them over and knock them down. And how much fun is that to see things knock over? We know kids love that stuff. So the next step would be to join an All Abilities club or program. This would then help them to continue and develop their confidence, build on their basic skills, to learn the more modified rules of disability sport, practice some of their social skills and turn taking, and gain some independence to play without mum and dad by their side. It also helps to decrease isolation for participants and for families, and gain confidence to participate in school sport. So I know often sport at school is quite difficult, especially in mainstream schools for children with autism. So, you know, slowly building their skills at home and then in an All Abilities program will give them more confidence to be able to participate with their school friends in class. I think really important things to remember when kids are playing sport at school is to communicate with their teachers about your child's abilities. So if you've been teaching them certain things at home, communicate that with the PE teacher so they can help to incorporate that stuff into their lesson plans and create a more inclusive environment for your child. Ensure that the school is open to using adaptations and to continue to grow the confidence of your child. And participating at school allows them to learn social etiquette, turn-taking, rules and consequence, all really important life skills that they're going to need. Some schools aren't really aware that using visuals during sport can be helpful. So maybe, you know, share with your PE teachers the visuals that you use with your kids at home. If we can keep that repetitive stuff happening, the children are far more likely to be engaged. So after school, obviously we are so lucky here in Victoria to have some amazing adult programs for children with disabilities. And just a few, and these are just a few that I've been involved in, but we have the National Cricket Inclusion Carnival run by Cricket Australia. We have the AFL Inclusion Cup. The AFL have a feeder football league. We have the Victorian Blind Football League. We have Cricket Schools Inclusion Cup. Soccer Fives in Melbourne. Special Olympics run some amazing programs. And we are also really lucky to have the AAA Play website, where if you are looking for a sporting activity for your child, you can go to AAA Play, type in your area, and all abilities programs within your area will come up, and you can find some great activities that you didn't even know were around. So that's another great resource for us. So that's really all from me, guys. I just wanted to give you guys a little bit of incentive to get the kids active at home while we're stuck at home. I'm always available if anybody has any questions. This is my email, and happy to share any of my knowledge with any of you if there's things that you need help with. Thanks.
Hello, welcome back. I think I had my microphone on mute, so you couldn't hear me typing, and I forgot to unmute it coming back. We will get this technology sorted out and make it all work. So a really big thank you to Kelly, a mountain of experience. She's only been doing this for a few years, but obviously from such intense involvement across so many different sports, being a parent 24/7, of course, the first priority in life, as well as being a coach to people from young children through to adults. Kelly has built up an incredible amount of knowledge and skills in a very short amount of time. As Kelly mentioned, AAA Play is a fantastic place to go. And on the AAAvic.org.au website, if I've gotten that correct, you can search by postcode and find sports close to you. And I encourage everyone to sign up for the newsletter as Sam and Seth and the team at AAA Play are sharing incredible resources and more stories, sort of behind the scenes looks, as I mentioned, with the ambassadors, including the recent one with Tony Langdon. We're going to hand over to Elise Muller next. Elise has been doing an incredible job in everything that she does. She's made a definite name for herself and is carving out an incredible business with active support. She's a current VFL player with the Essendon Bombers and aspiring to make the AFL. She has been awarded the Aspect Inspiration Award for Individual Achievement in 2015. In 2016, she was awarded the Victorian Indigenous Young Achiever Award. And Elise Muller is AFL Victoria's first disability program ambassador. I will now welcome and hand over to Elise. Welcome, Elise. Hello and welcome back. I realized that the whole time I've been talking, it's always been on my PowerPoint. We're just having a few issues trying to get Elise's sound working. So it's come back to me to fill the time and to answer any questions that maybe have come in online. I will do my very best to across the two platforms and answer everything. We're just gonna wait and see if Elise can get the microphone working. I'll say, I forgot to say at the beginning that the speakers have all come together with basically 6 days of notice. On Friday, we talked. Andrew Weiss from MySport Live, the team, Gideon, who is behind all the IT stuff, who's troubleshooting with Elise right now, and Dale have been working with us all week to make sure and test the audio and the video for all of us at home. As you can imagine, this is a first for many of us. We're used to going to offices. We're used to playing in big sporting fields, having IT on site. And so it's incredible what we've been able to achieve with the support of the speakers. On Friday, 6 days ago, when we talked about should we do an event for World Autism Awareness Day, we thought yes, but maybe it could wait 2 weeks, maybe it could wait 3 weeks, but we felt like April 2nd is such an important day that we wanted to put it all together for you. We wanted to reach out to you, everyone that's at home. We wanted a very diverse audience between professionals, people with autism, and their families, all joining together, all sharing their ideas and experiences in the chat. And I think we've achieved that. I think we've put together an incredible panel discussion. There's so many people to choose from. We couldn't choose everybody, unfortunately, but we've got 4 people with incredible amounts of knowledge. I think now we're going to try and cut back to Elise. So hopefully the next thing you see will be Elise or her PowerPoints, and you don't have to look at me any longer. We'll hand it back over to Elise.
Awesome. Hello. Yes, I think it's working. I'm just going to pop up my screen slideshow. Before I begin, I'd like to acknowledge traditional custodians of the land and pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging. And I'd also like to acknowledge that sovereignty was never ceded, and this always was and will be First Nations land. I am proud autistic. I want to things. Everyone on the spectrum.
Hello. I'm really sorry about that. I think that Elise has slow and choppy internet. We will see if we can swap either from Elise's home internet onto one of the MySport Live Wi-Fi dongles, vice versa. For some reason, it seems like the internet where Elise lives has suddenly slowed down. So all of the best testing throughout the week and troubleshooting. Sometimes we end up here, but if there's nothing that we haven't learned about resilience this week, we will just roll with it as it all goes. So bear with us while we sort that out. At the beginning of the presentation, I think I was quite nervous, excited. We have some incredible speakers. Ron's acknowledgement of country is always very powerful and a very beautiful thing to do. And in all of that excitement, I forgot to introduce myself. So my name is Sean Stevenson, and I am the project officer in the diversity and inclusion team at Sport and Recreation Victoria. I've been very lucky to have worked in the autism and disability field for 17 years, since 2003. Very much fell into autism by accident, was lost on campus one day and ended up with a summer job that never ended. Working with kids with autism in the early 2000s, I felt like sport, physical activity was an incredible opportunity to generalize the skills that we're working on, whether it was speech therapy, gross motor skills, etc. And just like Kelly said in her presentation, that the ability to see Cooper after, or to see what he was like with the ball and have that as a family was so powerful that that's been my experiences as well with the people that I've worked with and the people that I've supported. So I've always had physical activity, sport, and recreation as my hobby horse, and I've been very lucky to have completed a master's with the AFL with Deakin University. And since joining Sport and Recreation Victoria, had the privilege of overseeing the autism projects with some of the most incredibly passionate and knowledgeable people in Victoria, as well as a host of other disability-related projects. So combined, I certainly don't feel like I have all the answers. I certainly feel like every day I'm learning something new. And even this week, just having conversations with Kelly, Elise, Elle, and Julia, it's continually opens up my mind and my eyes. And while we can learn so much from going to class, reading textbooks and reading books, there's just no replacement for actually speaking and hanging out and spending time with people with autism. You'll hear my language flip. I'm in a transitioning period between using person first language, people with autism, for example, and identity first language, such as autistic people. For those in the community, probably us as professionals, we've been trained to use person first language, understandably. And now there's quite a strong movement to move or graduate or evolve towards identity first language, which is also very understandable. And so you'll also hear me use the words autistic people, autistic advocates. And while we all find our feet with the right language and the right terminology, we hope that we always use it in a respectful way. What we're going to do now is welcome Kelly back while we troubleshoot Elise's internet woes. And I believe that we might also have a special guest, Jonah. And if Jonah is ready, we'll bring Kelly back, and then we'll bring Jonah as well to interview Kelly and ask a few questions. Just while we're switching, if Jonah is able to join us, he's a young man with a big personality. He loves his footy. He loves the TV show The Front Bar, and undoubtedly, I imagine that we will see Jonah on TV one day. He's articulate. He's incredible, and he's one of Kelly's wonderful athletes. And since moving from Ballarat to Melbourne, he's also met Elise, and he's become one of Elise Muller's athletes. While he's an incredible athlete, he's also a big personality, and I'm sure that he's got a bright future as an interviewer ahead of him. Let's try to take a moment and hand this over to Jonah and Kelly if they're there.
Hi, Jonah.
Hey, Kelly, how are you doing? Yep.
I'm very well, Jonah. How are you?
Yep, we're still doing right after all these years, although I've moved to Ballarat.
You've moved to Melbourne from Ballarat?
Which is good. It's fantastic.
Amazing.
Yep, it's fantastic. It's fantastic here. But I'm still missing you, to be honest, and AAA as well. It's great. You're doing fantastic with that, and you're on the right tracks for that.
I love hearing that. Jonah. So do you have some questions
fantastic.
you'd like to ask me, Jonah?
I most certainly do.
You do?
So, who's your favourite football team?
My favourite football team. This is going to make you very happy, Jonah.
Yep.
I'm a Tigers supporter, just like you.
Yes.
Mad Tigers
That's
supporter.
the way to do it.
But I do work for the Western Bulldogs as well, so I have a little soft spot for the Western Bulldogs as well.
So you have a little soft top for them, all right?
Yeah.
So, what's your favourite thing about teaching children with disabilities to play sport?
Oh, my favourite thing about teaching children with disabilities is seeing how far they can come. So teaching them something that they
Wow.
never thought they could do before and them achieving that. That's my favourite part.
Wonderful. So, yep. What have you learned the most while coaching?
There's a really good saying, Jonah, that says a good coach can change a game and a great coach can change a life. So what I do every day, I hope, is an opportunity for me to change people's lives. So I think that's probably one of my favourite things about coaching, is that I get every day the opportunity to give someone maybe an opportunity that they never had before.
Yep, perfect. All right.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
What about me? Can I ask you some questions, Jonah?
Yep, you most certainly can. You're welcome.
All right. Are you ready?
You can go ahead.
Going to be good.
Yep, I am ready.
Can you
Most certainly.
tell the audience a little bit about your Be a Good Human project? You and your mum have been working on a Be a Good Human project. Can you tell them about that?
Well, it's quite a story, but I'll tell it anyway. So, Pete, it was me and my mum's idea. So we, because people are being really greedy at the moment with stuff like toilet paper and all the important stuff. Geez, toilet paper's under the pump, I'll say that. But people were being really greedy, so thought we'd start a new project, and whoever we know doesn't have anything, that whoever we love don't have anything, we can give it to them. And it's a good little project that I reckon will work towards the future.
And what did you do, Jonah? What did you and Mum make that you took around to supermarkets? What was that?
Took a bunch of signs. We went to Coles out near Yarraville Square, and put up a bunch of our Be a Good Human signs up there. But they went down pretty quickly. But yeah, it's
okay. They were up for a short amount of time.
Yeah. They were up for a short amount of time before I think the workers shut and had to yank them down. Yeah.
Yep. So I love it. All right. So Jonah, tell us what you've been doing with yourself while you've been home social distancing. What are you doing at home? Anything sport?
Nothing real exciting. I've been I'm a massive movie buff, so I'm pretty serious about movies with myself. So I just go into my bedroom and whack on a movie, to be honest. That's probably the best thing I can do. Yeah.
Do you get out on the scooter sometimes with Mum when she goes exercising?
I'm not a big scooter fan.
Aren't you?
I have been kicking the footy down at Yarraville Oval, but yeah, nothing too fancy that we've been doing during self-iso. Yep.
All right, so I've got another question for you. What's the favourite things that you learnt from me at AAA Sport?
Good question. I can't really remember. You're making me tough. It's making it tough. I don't really know. There were so many things that you taught me. I don't really remember.
Did you enjoy it, Jonah? Because I know when you first came to AAA Sport, you didn't really want to be there, did you?
Yeah, I really didn't want to be there. But I guess that's the thing with these autistic kids. Like you give them a go at it, and then they turn out to love it. So it's fantastic, I reckon.
That's awesome, Jonah. That's exactly what I was looking for. So what about you're working with Elise now,
Yep.
aren't you?
Yep.
Doing some work with
I
Elise.
am.
What's one of your favourite things that you've done with Elise?
I like as I said before, going down to Yarraville Oval and just having a good old fashioned kick of the footy down there. While everyone's absolutely twiddling their thumbs inside, going waiting for this virus to blow over. I'm still being pretty active. So
Good boy.
I'm doing my best
what I
to
like
try and
to hear.
hang in there. Yep.
All right. So I've got one last question, Jonah. Okay.
All right. Amazing.
Do you have any advice for other kids that are at home isolating about ways that they can keep active? Do you have any advice?
Maybe I've got an advice. Don't listen to the. You know what? Although the media keeps talking about this virus, don't listen to it, because it's going to make you more petrified. Just don't let a virus stop your life. Just go out to the park and have a good old workout down there. Yep, just keep yourself active.
We have to be a little bit careful though, don't we? We have to be careful about being close to other people. But it is still good to go out and get some exercise with your family.
Yep, it really is, isn't it? And Elise as well.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Jonah, for answering my questions. Do you have any other questions for me? One that maybe wasn't on our list? Do you have a curve one for one last question?
No.
It's up to you.
I had some for Elise, but she's having a bit of troubles right now, so
she is having some trouble.
Trust me. You know why she's having troubles? Because everyone in Essendon is slow. Yes.
Oh,
everyone in Essendon is always slow. I'll say that. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. So we might cut back to Sean now.
Yep.
So we'll say goodbye to you for now, Jonah.
Let's cut back to Sean. All right. And all right. Thanks for having me.
Hello. Welcome back. Huge thank you to Jonah, and thank you to Kelly for certainly rolling with it. We weren't expecting that. We were expecting Elise, who is still trying to troubleshoot some slow internet. And as Jonah has pointed out, maybe Essendon is a little bit slower than the people over in Richmond, I think he thinks. But nobody's probably as fast as those in Collingwood. We will try to get Elise back on, but what we will do now is we'll have a 2-minute break so that wherever you are, hopefully there's some really good catering, some fantastic coffee. We're gonna then bring on El Dow while we continue to work with Elise, and that will be followed by Julia. So please take this opportunity to make a fresh cup of tea, a fresh cup of coffee, and we're going to be right back in 2 minutes.
Hi, how you going? My name's Elle. I have been really fortunate to be part of today. It's my very first webinar, so bear with me, please. A little about myself. I've been involved in the disability field for 23 years. I started off working in disability, working in sort of residential services, and then I went on to managing a day service for adults with autism. And sort of dual diagnosis, and it was all sort of pre-NDIS. So I ended up moving out of that industry after my daughter was diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome at the age of 6, and ADHD as well, and just sort of found working in the industry and sort of being at home as well was quite difficult. Quite a journey being a mum with a daughter on the spectrum. Especially during the teenage years. I think from about 14 to about 17 and a half was probably the most difficult time. And I think sort of she grew to like me a little bit more when she sort of came closer to 18. She's almost 19 now. I've been working in football and had some really amazing opportunities over the last couple of years. My main role is as a football development manager, so working in and around participation and development. And part of that has been working with FEDA, which is the Football Integration Development Association, which is now actually in its 30th year. And I've had some great involvement there, from working with my local clubs, as well as being part of sort of the National Inclusion Carnival last year, as sort of Vic Metro coach, alongside with an amazing man and coach within FEDA, Rob Clem from Williamstown Seagulls, who was previously a vice principal at Rosamond School. Part of my role as well around participation and development, I've creating some other initiatives, so making all my Auskick centres to be AAA identified as well. So when I first started, I sort of had 22 centres, none were AAA, went to 2, and sort of going into this year when the season eventually kicks off, I'll have 18 out of the 22 which are AAA identified, and I'll have those other 2 centres working with Bethany Devonish from Deakin University in and around sort of the all play space as well, and working a lot closely with the coaches and the clubs as well around what does sort of inclusion mean. What I've particularly found with working in sort of the football is around the social connectedness that sport brings us all together, and I think particularly with a lot of the participants on the autism spectrum is actually having that connectedness can be quite hard, and talking to a lot of my sort of participants as well is that they're finding this time really difficult, particularly around like the social isolation. So some of the initiatives that we're doing is using sort of different apps like Zoom to engage. Also, House Party is another one that's sort of popping up as well. It's a little bit interesting. My kids sort of introduced me to that. The other thing, so Alex Murray is a VFL umpire, and he's also been doing some stuff with some of the participants within FEDA, just around how to improve sport skills generally, which I'll send to Sean to send out. And another great sort of item that my participants have been using as well is the Ross Faulkner One Touch Footy, where it sort of straps on, and participants can sort of use that in their backyard or in the lounge room. And Kelly had some amazing ideas earlier just around sort of adapting different activities. So I think that's it from me as such. So I'll flick it over to Sean now.
Right. Hi, everybody. My name's Julia Parsonson, and I am a psychologist, an educational and developmental psychologist working here I work in Essendon, but hopefully my internet isn't too slow. So I just wanted to talk to you today about physical activity from a mindful perspective. I don't know how I can actually share my slides with you, so I'm going to have to wing it, I think, unless I get a little tip on the side of the screen about how to share my screen. But first I'll start by giving you a bit of background about myself. As I said, I'm an educational and developmental psychologist. I started out my journey as a teacher of early years education in the UK, and then around 10 years ago, trained up as a psychologist. I completed my doctorate in child psychology at the University of London. And yeah, my interests since that time have moved a little bit more to focusing on sort of a meditation mindfulness perspective of working with young children. Now, if you can bear with me, I've just had a little hint about a share screen pop. So hopefully, no, I don't think that's going to work. I can't see a share screen button. Sorry, guys. So what I'm going to do then is I'm just going to plow on and hope that you can all follow me. I've been doing the remote telehealth, we're calling it telehealth, for the last week or so, which has been a really interesting and different way of working with my families. And I want to give you a few tips that I've been giving to families generally as I've been working over the last sort of week or so. Obviously, a lot of people, a lot of you presumably will have children with autism. You're probably already really good at visual schedules. I know that's been mentioned a lot. So hopefully you have a routine, you have your sort of getting dressed every morning, showering or washing, doing whatever it is you need to do to keep things a little bit normal for your children. And then the other thing that I've been telling families to do is 3 things every single day. So the first thing to do is to make sure every single day you do something active to move your body. This can be anything at all. It could involve going with your family, going for a bike ride or a scoot or whatever it is. But it can also be something like building an obstacle course. I know that Kelly mentioned that first thing this morning, the idea of building an obstacle course in your lounge room, or dancing to a YouTube video, doing a yoga video, whatever it is. So that's the first one, is to do something to move your body every day. The second one, I'm trying to tell everybody to do something to use their brain every single day. I'm not talking about sitting down and doing worksheets through school. I'm talking about reading or doing a puzzle, playing a strategy game together, playing a musical instrument, whatever to keep at this time. And then finally, the third thing is to make sure that every single day you do something fun. I've talked to families who are having movie nights every night where they're making popcorn and sitting down and watching a movie together. Or families who are building rockets in their garage, or doing really fun creative or art tasks together, anything like that. And then, so once you're doing those 3 things, using your body, using your brain, and doing something fun every single day, and that's within the structured routine that you would normally keep, the final point for all the parents out there is just to engage in a little bit of self-care. Everybody's going to need their own space. The brain, the neurotypical brain, let alone the autistic brain, tends to find change really unsettling and really challenging. And so at this point, we really need to make space, and you've got your own self-care routines going on. That includes parents as well. So I will go on to talk about mindfulness. I imagine when I say that word, every single one of you has just noticed a thought pop into your head. It might be a thought about somebody sitting in a field or on the edge of a pier or something, making an om sound, looking very peaceful. I think that the concept of Zen mindfulness is lovely, but probably not practical or realistic for most of you. So I like to think of mindfulness as just the ability to direct your attention right here, right now. So getting your brain into your body. A lot of people spend a lot of their time with their brain thinking about the future or possibly thinking about the past. And so mindfulness into the present, into your body, and that's where it ties in so well with physical activity. From a neuropsychological perspective, we have to bear in mind that our body and our brain have a really strong connection, and our body is always sending messages to our brain, and our brain is always sending messages back to our body. And listening to your body is absolutely essential. When we listen to the messages that our body sends us, we have the ability to respond to what it's saying. So when we listen to our stomach grumbling, we don't have to wait till we get hangry. We can choose to go and have a snack at that moment. So it's really, really important to listen to the messages your body's sending you. And in order to do that, you have to be aware of them. There's a little bit of research around that shows that children with autism have an increased ability to pay attention for a longer period to the body, to the messages inside their body. And part of what that means is that they miss the messages that are going on in the world around them. So when we're working with children with autism, it might be a good idea to do mindful activities and moving their body activities that allow them to direct their attention to the world around them. So what I'm going to run through now, and I wish I had my PowerPoints, but we'll see how we go, is just a few little activities that you can be doing with your children at home, keeping your children active, but also teaching them mindfulness skills that will work for them forever. So the first one is to remember that we have 5 senses. We have touch, we have taste, we have sight, we have hearing, and we have smell. And any activity at all that gets us to use those 5 senses will be helping your children with mindfulness. So go for a sound walk. Go and walk around the block and see how many different sounds you can hear. Go for a visual walk. I don't know if people saw in the newspaper the idea of the bear walks, and there are bears in all these windows. So that's something that even I've been doing recently, is looking and noticing my environment to see if I can find any of those teddy bears. So those are some ways you can be using mindfulness on your daily walks if you're taking them. Another way is games that you can play in the house. So, for example, teach children vocabulary about their body, so moving their body quickly and then moving their body slowly. A good one is thinking about spaghetti. So we've got cooked spaghetti, is like this, and it's really tight, and you can press your children's arms. And then we've got, sorry, that's raw spaghetti, and this is cooked spaghetti that is nice and loose and floppy. And so teaching your children that vocabulary of tight and loose and hard and soft and fast and slow, as well as obviously hot and cold, all of that is going to be helping them to recognize their body signals and to communicate them to you. So ideas of games that involve that might include musical statues. It might include kind of making up dances. It might include obstacle courses.
speaking now. It looks like we've lost Julia's video feed first, and then we lost her audio. We lost her video, and then we've lost her audio. It's a fantastic learning curve for all of us to sort this out. So big thank you in advance for your patience, and thank you for sticking together with us as we fumble our way through this together. I can see that there's quite a few viewers on AAA Play as well as on the DSR TV. So thank you for sticking with us. And just as I mentioned then, the platforms, a big thank you to everybody at DSR, Melanie and Aidan and Richard for always being so supportive of these live streams, as well as AAA Play, Set and Sam, who are doing all the magic behind the scenes, making sure everything's as smooth as can be for everybody. I've got a message that we've got Julia back. I have a newfound respect for newscasters when they're doing the live feeds and they're throwing to one person to the next across the country. I think a significantly newfound respect for them. So I'm going to throw back to Julia over in Melbourne.
Hi, thank you, Sean, for covering for me while I went there. This is certainly a new challenge that we're all facing, finding these new ways to do things. I was actually just about finished, and I was just going to summarize everything I've said, and it's probably not a bad moment to kind of wrap up really quickly. Basically, while we're in this this situation where none of us kind of know where we're going to be going, we're just all coping with uncertainty and new things. Basically making sure you do the 3 things. First of all, use your body every single day. I've listed a couple of fun activities that you can be doing with your children. Secondly, using your brain every single day, some kind of problem solving or game or having fun in that way. And then thirdly, making sure you do something fun every single day. All of this is about important self-care. Any activities, any physical activities that get your children to notice their internal experiences and to pay attention to them is going to be beneficial in the long term for helping them develop that emotional regulation skill and to communicate what their wants and needs are. And the final rule is just to make sure that you're having fun with it. So hopefully now I will fling seamlessly back to Sean and we'll see how we go. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Julia. I think that was as seamless as we have been all week. So thank you for that. And I think thank you for those 3 top tips. I would say while there's a whole world of pressure on people at the moment, a lot of people have been stood down from their jobs. People are looking forward to really, average things like going on flights and going on holidays. And now we're all doing the right thing and practicing physical distancing. But with physical distancing, it doesn't mean social distancing. So as we've heard from Elle and Kelly, who are both checking in on some of their players and using apps like House Party, Zoom. Kelly's been doing some Instagram Live videos as well as Facebook Live from AAA Play. And so it is important that while we are physical distancing, we're not being fully antisocial. And of course, the irony that a lot of people think is that people with autism are not that social, which is 100% a false stereotype. People with autism are very social, and as Elle alluded to earlier, one of the challenges that people are experiencing is the lack of social time. We are going to try to throw over to Elise Muller, who I think doesn't need any introduction, mainly because I've already introduced her, but we'll do it nonetheless. I'll just look for a message from Gideon at MySport Live to see if we are ready to switch over to Elise. So Without further ado, I do want to introduce Elise. We're going to give this another crack. And just as a little reminder, Elise is an absolutely incredible person. And while awards and accolades are never expected, they are 100% deserving. Elise has been awarded the Aspect Inspiration Award for Individual Achievement 2015, the Victorian Indigenous Young Achiever Award 2016. And this past year, Elise Muller was appointed as AFL Victoria's first disability ambassador. I'll throw over to Elise in Essendon.
Hello, everyone. Take two. My heart is actually racing quite a lot. So people with autism can deal with change, and this just goes to prove it. Just extra adrenaline. Okay. So I'm hoping you guys will see the presenter view. So happy World Autism Day, everyone. Before I begin, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land and pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging. I'm a proud Wiradjuri and Palawa person, and I'm also a proud autistic. What I'd like to say about how I reference my autism is initially I used to call it tree. So I had a bit of a code word around autism. That was because I was quite ashamed of it. It brings a good point of how we refer to autism. So if I was working with a client and they were to use the word Aspie, that's how I would be using, that's what I would be referencing autism as around that. And if they were saying that they're on the spectrum, I'd be using on the spectrum as a reference, and autistic or and all that. Because at the end of the day, it's someone's identity, and we want to really respect the labels around how we identify. Growing up, I thought that I would have a good future initially. I wanted to have friends, and I was waiting to have friends. I wanted to become independent, and I wanted to play sport at the highest level. As I started to realize that I was different, these goals became more wishes. And every birthday, when I was like blowing up the candles, I would wish for these three things. And I you know, following rules and being on the spectrum, Mum was like, you know, you're taking a rather long time to come up with these wishes, which is what she thought. But I was just kind of referencing all the things that I thought of in that year. And then she goes, you can only wish for one thing each year. So I had my list, and every year then I would change to the next one. So if it was 2017, hypothetically, I'd be like, okay, I wish I could have friends that I enjoy playing with. And then 2018 would be, I wish to become independent. This is something that I really, really invested in and manifested. So what type of kid was I? I was the somewhat impulsive kid. I was very loud and hyperactive. And at the same time, I also was quite scared. I was really shy, even though I was loud. And what that means is if someone was to go and speak to me, I'd hide behind my mum, and I would never want to be separated from my mum. And I would try to, I was very much an observer, but I wanted to be included. I remember the first time I felt connected to the world, it was through playing ball sports. So it was about prep and being quite impulsive and being quite someone who was always told, you know, sit down, remember to be quiet, remember to listen, and who had sensory aversions. I learned to not trust myself. But for the first time, when I had this basketball and I was bouncing, I was making a sound. And when I dropped the ball and it bounced back to me, I was having a connection. And instead of like clicking and making and having stimulation, instead of rocking, what I ended up doing was trying to disguise it with things that were more socially acceptable. So bringing a soccer ball around and rolling the soccer ball back and forth, or bringing a basketball and bouncing the basketball. This became the way that I felt connected and I understood the world around autism. I had the interest of sport was also because it made sense. It was quite a functional thing. There were angles, there were bit of maths involved. I'd put myself out there, and bit by bit I'd learned that I was different, but different meant that I wasn't wanted. So I would, in PE class, if the teacher got 2 kids to be captains and to choose the teams, they would pick the kids that they wanted on their team, and I'd become like one of the last ones. And then I remember this one time, and it stayed with me forever, when there was me and this other kid, and this other kid had a sling on because he had an injured arm. And I thought, all right, I'm definitely going to get chosen here because I am allowed to play. And they chose the other kid. And then what made it worse was the red captain. It was his turn to pick next. So I just kind of assumed that I was on the red team then because it was his turn and I was the last one left. But instead, he then went to the blue and he goes, no, you can have her. And the blue's like, I don't want her, you can have her. And this was really created from the negative whispers of Elise being different, Elise being pulled out of class and having a teacher aide. And the message from exclusion was that I don't belong, that I can't do this, that I'm not enough, that there's something wrong with me. And again, being different means I am less. Naturally, from there, I created rules to keep myself safe. And those rules were don't put yourself in danger, don't put your hand up in class, all people are untrustworthy. If people, and I guess that's all around low self-esteem, but how that looked for me growing up as a teenager when the bullies weren't necessarily, they weren't bullying in a way that I understood. I was quite naive and I'd join in things and thinking that they wanted me, and then they'd end up laughing at me. And when I look in the last 2 years, a lot of the work that I've done on myself in my self-esteem has been changing my core beliefs, because and this is quite personal, but my core belief is that, with it being that I'm not enough, is that people don't like me, and if they like me, then they don't know me, and creating, I guess, excuses as to why I'm right because I have a bias to believe that you're right. And so I remember I was like, probably in grade 3 or 4, my mum was already in the car, but I'll say I sat her down, but I felt like I did. She was confessing, she was letting me know that like I was okay and that everyone's unique. And I confessed to her that I'm an alien. Obviously, being on the spectrum, I had already previously looked up the definition of autism and saw that it was a species that was not natural to its the environment. So I saw this as quite correct. I told my mum, I said, Mum, I'm not from here. I'm allergic to this world and I don't belong. Eventually, my mum told me that I had the diagnosis of autism, and initially I cried with relief because I knew that I was different and there was finally a reason as to why I was the way I was. And hearing that there are other people like me, I was feeling like I wasn't alone. So I hopped onto the internet and I read what it had to say about people like me. Google said, autism is a lifelong developmental disability that affects how people behave and interact with the world around them. It may be mild, moderate, or severe. The main features of autism are difficulty in social interactions, communication, restriction, and repetitive behaviors and interest. From this, I learned that autism was a focus on the things that I couldn't do. And I started to detach myself from the label and started to get quite defensive and triggered whenever someone brought up the word autism, which is why I had a code word for it. So in my head, tree or autism was why I saw the world differently. When other people, they would say I'm from another planet, There was things about vaccinations and cures which really confused me because I don't have a disease. The focus was on my bad behavior, things that I couldn't do, and my parents got a bit of backlash around how they were raising me. Autism, for me, when I go through the reports, it was very much deficit based. Elise won't make friends. Elise takes things too literally. Elise is obsessive. Elise gets distracted easily and can't focus. Elise has processing delay. Elise has high anxiety. Elise struggles with a lot of things. Elise is not flexible and rigid. Elise is rigid. Elise is black and white. Elise can't do grey. Elise is stubborn. Autism means Elise can't. So from that, you could see that the focus was really on what I couldn't do. In a world where my needs weren't supported and I wasn't included and I had low self-esteem, autism was a disability. My interest has always been my sport. So I'd carry the soccer ball around everywhere and it was my friend, my companion. Sport for me was how I made sense of the world. Where I felt that I belonged, it was my motivation to do what I found most difficult and scary, which was be around people, and it was my outlet. One of my goals for sport was for footy. I made the change from soccer to football, and being someone that follows, and it's one of my strengths, follows instructions quite methodically. I had a bit of a training program that wasn't necessarily individualized, and I do struggle with knowing what's happening with my body, and if things aren't kind of structured in the way that there's an end goal, I'll keep going. So what that means is if someone was to say do as many push-ups or the year before and I wanted to make national, and following that training program, I ended up tearing my lateral meniscus. And I went to the surgeon, and I might see if I can change, because I just want to, I'm going to change the screen because I just feel like I'm talking to no one. Okay, cool. So I went to the surgeon and he looked at the MRI and he looked at the cyst and he was like, Elise, you need surgery. And naturally, I was really, really disheartened. And he explained to me that you won't make nationals in time, because I injured myself in December and nationals was in April. My birthday's in March the 18th, just a random if we're going to talk about dates. And I was really upset. And by this stage, I had my knee brace. It was a full leg brace, so I'd lost muscle and I had. It was quite swollen, and my knee was locked. And the operation was booked in for March the 20th, and I was like, Mum, I don't want surgery. You need to take me to get another opinion because I'm scared. And once they take something out of my knee, I can't get it back. Also, I was quite scared of anesthetic. So Mum took me to a surgeon. And another surgeon, and surely enough, he goes, Elise, you need surgery. And by that stage, that was like 2 against something that wasn't an option for me. It wasn't part of my plan. And I told Mum, I was like, Mum, if you keep taking me to surgeons, we're going to keep getting the same answer that I need surgery. So Mum took me to then a physician, and this was the beginning of April. Shout out to Dr. Daff. And he told me that I need surgery. And I cried. I had shut down because that meant that it was quite a big test. They were going to take the whole meniscus out. It meant I wouldn't have my sport. And it also meant, well, I'd already kind of accepted that I wasn't going to play in the nationals because by that stage I'd been dropped for insurance reasons. Then you have that choice. And then I was like, I want my knee to get fixed. And then he goes, there are some people in the world that have like an amazing ability where they can control their body. And he told me to look it up, and he goes, there's people that can control their body temperature in Antarctica. There's people who they just have an immense mind over matter. And I was kind of inspired by that, but it didn't make sense. And then, so I was like, what do you mean? And he explained that the brain receives a message from the point of injury, and then from there we get the throbbing sensation, and that sends a message back to our head that there's a problem, and then we make sense of it and say, okay, stop. When I received that like the explanation, I thought, wow, I could definitely be one of those people who control my body. I've been spending my whole life feeling allergic to the world, feeling like things are too loud, too bright, they hurt my skin. And if there's one thing that I've been trained my whole life, it's to control myself and control my brain and to be fixed. And so in the world's fastest, probably not, but in the world's, in my head, it was definitely a really quick and probably rushed rehabilitation. I had 3 weeks before National, and first week was, okay, get out the knee, get out of the knee brace, go into the pool and walk. And the second week was straight line running, and the third week I was just I couldn't do zigzag running or anything like that, change direction. So instead I just well, when I got there, I had my knee completely taped, and I changed my game. Instead of being agile, I just brought the person in and then drew them in, got the hands, and then got tackled, but at least it let the game continue. And I played 4 out of 5 of the games. And what I do want to say from that is that was definitely from the strength of the hyperfocus from my autism. And when we hear, so parents out there, when you hear someone, your kids keep saying, but why, but why, but why, we got to look at that as someone engaging, because shut down and withdrawal, you won't get a response, or you'll get a bit of a meltdown when there's a lot of anxiety. But when someone is saying, but why, if it helps, change it in your head, translate it to and why, because that person's still engaging. And by understanding the reason why I'm being asked to do something that's uncomfortable, it's really helpful. Probably don't buy into the whole, I'll give you $2 if you do it, because what that teaches me is that you don't see the value in me doing exactly what you're asking me to do. What that means is that my focus isn't on the goal of growing, isn't on the goal of doing my best. It's just I'm kind of placidly just doing it for amount of time to get the $2. And then from there, after that, I've gone, okay, when I find something really hard, I need a reward guaranteed at the beginning. I need assurance. And instead of the learning afterwards of, growth mindset, what did you learn from it? You looked at the beginning like you were quite nervous. Did you work past that? And really fueling those channels and taking control of the processing system. I'll change screens. I ended up, I don't have the thing on there, but I ended up making, the national tournament. I think I said that. So what we want to do is to change the language. And when we look at that through sport, what I heard my whole way through school was Elise's obsession. Elise's obsession with sport. The message that created was that my interest in sport was too much. My interest in other things wasn't enough. I am too much. I am not enough. It's a distraction. Nothing. We've got nothing to work with when we look at it as an obsession, and it can be taken away as a disciplinary tool. Elise's focus. So if we then change it to strengths-based special interest, we realize that we have the hyperfocus. We have a tool for motivation and a foundation for understanding, and it can be utilized to create focus. Instead of Elise focuses too much on sport and is in a world of her own, it's Elise makes sense of the world through what she understands, and Elise creates a platform where she feels safe to try. My high anxiety is the biggest barrier of my autism. So Sean spoke about it being like a comorbid diagnosis, anxiety, depression. I sometimes feel like I'm just collecting labels each time I go to the psychologist, but I'd rather accolades, to be honest. But anyway, I find my autism isn't as much of it's more the anxiety attached to how I process rather than the actual processing. Because even though I do process things really, really different, it's quite funny when at least my friends find it quite funny when I come up with some random things. But for me, that's normal, and I don't find that difficult. But it's the anxiety around functioning and doing things that I find difficult that is the disability. So I can be social, I can be around friends, but I'm anxious because I don't feel safe. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know, etc. So deficit-based would be Elise is too literal. Strengths-based, which gives you, or solution-based, would be Elise listens to what you say. It's important to be mindful of how you say what you want to say. So there will be misunderstanding if I'm not talking in a way, or like me as the coach to someone on the spectrum, if I'm not talking in a way that they understand, in a way that's specific, and if I'm talking quite broadly, there's going to be miscommunication. But that's about the approach, not the person. Problem-based, instead of saying that we can't cope with or struggle with routine being changed, and we can say, okay, when there is structure and routine is kept, we are setting them up for success. Instead of saying that we struggle with spontaneity and being flexible, we set the person up for success with clear expectations. Instead of saying that we can't cope with struggles or we struggle with anxiety, we set the person up for success by creating safety. And they might struggle with processing information, or I might have a processing delay, but if I'm given one step at a time, I can definitely do that one thing to the best of my ability. And that's how Bulldogs, Debbie Lee, my old coach, would give me instructions. She would say to the whole team, okay, this is our plan, this is the structure. And for me, my strength was just playing instinctively. And so after it, she'd check in with me and she'd go, okay, the one thing I want you to do is focus on this player. This player does not touch the ball. And I'd go, okay, rule, this player does not touch the ball. All I'm focusing on is that player. And that really channeled my hyperfocus. This ensures that the needs are still met, but the emphasis is that inclusion is making changes for accessibility where I can do, I can be, and I can feel my best. Special needs is not a reason to make exceptions of why it didn't work. It's a trigger to implement needs. So if we look at this as a bit of an example, like in school, for example, this might help parents doing homeschooling at the moment. Leveraging motivation to succeed. It might actually be better because you can focus on really changing it for your young child rather than normally it's not changed for every single one. But Pythagoras' theorem, I didn't enjoy it. I wanted to give up easily, and I had no interest in learning about it because it had nothing to do with what I enjoy. So one time we had a bit of a test, and so I just drew the soccer ball. I'm not some sort of genius. I just was bored and I drew a soccer pitch on the piece of paper that happened to have a maths question. And from that though, what I did was instead of it going A, B, and C, I ended up going, okay, so there's a goalkeeper or the goals, easy. I can really visualize that because I love soccer. From there, you have the second point, B, which is Elise. The world revolves around me. So it's more interesting if you include me in the explanation. Then we've got Messi, world famous soccer player, arguably the best soccer player. I'm really promoting a lot of things that are unrelated at the moment. But then you've got all of a sudden you've got a right angle triangle. By doing this, I was able to spend more time focusing on it. I could try harder for longer. I could see purpose in it, and I could understand it better, and it just made it easier to learn. Pythagoras' theorem became one of my best subjects, and I still remember how to do it now, which you don't remember much after you leave school of what you don't use. But that actually helped me a lot with my soccer, and it helped me when I was playing like pool or snooker. Yeah. Once I did learn that accidentally, though, I started applying that to almost everything. When I had to do an essay, I would always try now then to translate it to my sport. It was only because it wasn't linked to my strengths and learning style that I found school was difficult for me, and sport, going into environments that I didn't know, being social. For a bit of an analogy, neurotypicals, which we use to describe people who don't have different neurological processing, are a bit like indoor boots. They can run on any surface. It's kind of smooth for them. For me, though, the way that my brain works is a bit like outdoor boots. On a hard surface, it's unnatural, it's uncomfortable, it's unstable, and it is hard. But if you put me on an outdoor oval where it's on my natural surface or my natural safe space, I have a better grip than any of the indoors, and I can run faster than the indoors. So neurotypicals are kind of good in any situation. They can go indoor and they can go outdoor. For me, I need a very structured and carefully thought out approach and environment. But when you do cater for my needs and when you do link it with my strengths, I achieve. I'd like to compare that to like playing community and playing at elite. For some people, they would see playing at an elite level as difficult. For me, it was definitely easier than community. At community, my needs weren't really met. I struggled. I disengaged socially because I didn't understand what was happening in the late night dinners. And I didn't really perform very well. And I was seen as kind of less competent. But at the elite level, there was structure, there was schedules. You had to be at a certain place at each time. There were a lot of prompts. They filled all the different learning styles with the way that they were given, and they really invested in every person's needs. They didn't see me as any different, and they knew that their goal wasn't just to provide a good training session where people felt good. Their goal was for everyone to be able to perform. And for anyone to be able to perform, they need to have supports. And so they kind of bypassed the whole, why do you need this and is it worth resources and time? They just went, okay, cool, tell us what you need. Tell us if you can implement it and we'll just create the space for you to implement it. Being younger though, I'm not sure if I would have been able to say to realize what it is that I needed. If we look back, the people with autism who have made the greatest impact are the ones who use their strengths to make sense of the world and were allowed to improve what they're good at and use their strengths to also improve what they're not good at. If we are given a role where we are valued and we enter a place where we are no longer seen as special needs or disabled, but we are needed, then that's where we're feeling included. And for me, that's where I started increasing my self-esteem, because my whole life it was all about what Elise can't do. But when I stepped into sport, I had a role to play in the world, and I had a role to play in the footy. So it shouldn't have been Elise can't cope with change. It should have been Elise struggles. If only they knew Elise struggles with change, but Elise is going to cope with 7 school changes and is going to finish year 12. Elise is going to voluntarily change her football team to prioritize her needs. Instead of Elise, this is what I got told in year 10, Elise, you should be in a special school. It would be Elise is going to, in year 10, become a teacher aide, qualified, so then she can realize what is the gaps in the education. Instead of Elise is going to struggle keeping friends because people with autism don't understand relationships, it's going to be Elise is going to study it and have a really invested interest in it, and Elise is going to create her own business where you can buy a friend. Instead of Elise is impulsive and behavior needs severe attention, still, like quite late, when I was about 17 this happened, it's going to be when Elise has a role and Elise has clear structure and channeled hyperfocus, Elise will show up. Elise is going to go to be invited to Government House to have breakfast with the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, Prince Harry and Princess Meghan. Bit of a funny one. I showed up completely nervous because I had to take public transport and I really struggled with it. And also I just had no idea, but I was expecting a lot of people and I was just nervous. And everyone else seemed quite comfortable and they seemed to be talking with each other and doing the social neurotypical things that happen. And for me, when we were addressed by like the army dude, and he told us how we should approach their Royal Highnesses, all of a sudden it was like autism for the win. I know exactly what to do. Meanwhile, the neurotypicals became quite anxious. Therefore, when the approach is right, autism becomes a bit of a superpower. I want to make clear, though, that I am not the exception. I'm not someone who has, I don't know, my brain is, I'm not sure. What it is that I found the way, the approach for what works, and also I'm able to speak a language that my clients understand. But my clients have all achieved amazing, amazing goals. And it's also losing kind of expectation on how long it will take. There's Aiden, who has autism and cerebral palsy. He completed a 5K fun run, which was his goal. There's Josh, whose goal was to learn to ride a bike. And his probably biggest barrier was sensory-wise, and it was going outside, the wind. And what I needed to succeed with Josh was for me to know his special interest. His special interest was Harry Potter, and Lego. So what I did on the first session was I built a bike. Well, he built the bike, and from there I attempted to build a bike as well. But we used his bike anyway, his Lego bike. He used it to kind of go forward, and from there, in his safe environment, he learned in order to balance, you need to pedal. In order to balance, you need to create some speed. And then to get him out the house, I tied, because I had a skipping rope, I didn't have a rope, but the boom box to his bike and played Harry Potter theme song. And that created enough of a safe space for him to get onto the bike. And then there's Anthony. Anthony, I meet Anthony in the adult care place, and he has a severe intellectual disability and autism. He went from 120, that should be 30 kilos. Anyway, he went from 124 kilos to now he was at 87, but he's kind of gone up. But that's all about, what's it called? Isolation, #Corona. I want you guys to remember these amazing people. Some of these in the picture, I still work with, some of them I don't, but these amazing people, when it's got nothing to do with a disability, it's about the approach, it's about the environment. And when we do something and it's not working, we just got to look at what the answers are, and they're normally right in front of us. I want to remove the language around high functioning and low functioning, because it's quite deficit and offensive to pretty much everyone. My ability and inability to access is not a reflection on how much I understand, but how much you understand and can cater for my needs, so I am able to access it. I much prefer high support requirements and low support requirements instead of high functioning and low functioning. It's important to recognize that these support requirements can also change in different environments and with different energy levels. So that explains why when I was at school, my teachers would go, yeah, bad behavior, but she's okay. And when I'd go home, I'd completely let loose and everything. It's because during the day, I built an endurance to hold myself together and mask using scripts, which is why I liked footy, because I could copy the whole, how's it going, mate? Yeah, good, mate. All right, do you want to grab a footy? Yep, 1, 2. Very, very structured, as opposed to kind of normal social interactions. My friends are definitely through my sport, which is also something to notice about with the corona situation, is by losing the social setting and what we're used to, we also lose that platform to use the scripts that we already know, and it becomes more face-to-face communication, which is why we might withdraw. But using this mask and using the script is quite exhausting. Also, everyone's a little bit on the spectrum, a little bit autistic. I don't find this necessarily helpful. Everyone can feel anxious, definitely. Everyone can feel socially anxious. Everyone can have sensory aversions, and these are all autistic traits, but autism is a neurological difference. And even though this saying is to create resignation and understanding, what the harm can be is by saying everyone's a little bit autistic means that if everyone can cope, and basically when you eliminate a diagnosis or you eliminate the need, you also eliminate the need for change. And without that change, without that support requirement, because we're normalizing it, the person can't access the approaches and the foundations and the extra support that they require to create accessibility. So I heard from somewhere, it's like, yeah, everyone's a little bit autistic, and then they replied, yeah, just like everyone's a little bit pregnant, because they might have like a bloated stomach, or be hurting from standing, or they might have eaten a lot and they're feeling quite bloated. Needs can definitely become less obvious and less disruptive when they are catered for. And in the different environments and approaches that my autism definitely can be seen as less, but that doesn't mean I'm less autistic. That means that my disability affects me. My disability is being catered for. And eventually what that happens is it eliminates the disabling part of autism. And from there, I can definitely say autism is my superpower. In this situation that we're currently in, change of routine and structure, isolation, uncertainty, and loss of access to special interests in some cases, this can be where autism becomes a bit of a disability. But if we look at how the person, what they had access to in their usual life and try to replicate it. So for example, for me with sport, I got connection and a physical outlet. We don't need to necessarily be outside, as Cal was saying, and we don't need to be outside to access that. We can be inside to do that. The schedule and visuals and checklists. Actually, Callie already said this, but yeah, so you can still create that familiarity and meet the needs while in this different circumstance. Disability isn't a reflection on the person, it's a reflection on the current system that affects the person's ability. In the beginning, I explained to you who I was, and then eventually shared a little bit about who I became. However, to the parents, I want you to realize that your child already has the greatness to become their best self. They already belong. The environment hasn't recognized it though. They already have the strengths that they need to improve what they are finding difficult and be a utility. They're already worthy of being in this world. We just need to be able to channel it and create an accessible and inclusive environment and approach. And accessible and inaccessible environment. In an inaccessible environment, my autism was my darkest secret. I blamed it for not belonging, and I didn't want to live. But after learning how to use my strengths to work for me, and after learning that I can, and it's not necessarily that I can't, and fulfilling it. I became an elite athlete. I have lifelong friends, and the third one of being independent, I achieved. But most of all, I'm happy in myself. There are methods that I share in larger talks to how to do this, but fundamentally, having a strengths-based approach and having an inclusive environment is the most important thing. It saves lives, and that's what I wanted to share with you guys. I hope you enjoyed my talk. Oh yeah, I like leave it up, but basically you can hit me up on Facebook, public, not personal, you know, or anyway, and you can like active support or like, I don't know, do LinkedIn. You know, I should just replicate the script of, you know, like, share, comment, subscribe. I think that would have been better. I'm better with scripts rather than thinking. I can think for myself, but it's just the processing thing. So in real time, I don't know, maybe I could just be like, anyway, sorry. I'm finished, Sean. Hope you.
That was perfect, Elise. A huge thank you. For quite a while, I'm not sure what happened. We had a black screen. But what was nice is, I guess, with the blank screen, we don't have the competing visual stimuli, and we can just 100% focus on the auditory and Elise's important messages coming through. I think approach, what she said is that you can save lives, which is absolutely incredible and very important. Of course, anxiety and depression is higher in the population of people with autism than without. And so we encourage everyone to have the right supports around you, GP, a mental health care plan, speak to Lifeline and speak to Beyond Blue, because those are very important resources, and it's important to look after yourself out there. Elise had so many incredible messages, and I was writing them all down furiously and trying to see what sort of conversations are happening online. I think everyone's probably a bit quiet, just listening in on everything that's going on. So what we'll do right now is invite people to start writing their questions on AAA Play on their Facebook live stream or on DSR TV. With DSR TV, to make a comment, you do have to log in to Vimeo. It only takes a second. You can log in via your email. The other way to ask a question, if you've got a question that you'd like to ask privately, then you can email me, Sean, SHAWN.Stevenson, STEVENSON @sport.vic.gov.au. And I'll put that question out privately. I won't out who it is if you do write to me. So let us get started. We are going to switch to panel discussion view, I believe, with the magic of My Sport Live. And we will welcome back Elle, we'll welcome back Kelly, we'll welcome back Julia, and of course, Elise, who you have just been hearing from. So wonderful. It looks like everyone's cameras are going to work, and it looks like everybody's audio is going to work. And so I guess just as we all sort of digest all of those important messages that we have from Elise, I throw over to Julia talking about mindfulness and strengths-based approach, focusing on the things that we can do. What are some of the things that struck you about Elise's conversation just now?
I mean, it was incredible to speak, and you know, it's not often, I suppose, that I really kind of sit down and listen to such just a beautifully articulate way of expressing your own experiences. I think in terms of mindfulness, what really struck me was Elise's talk about how she's able to ignore her own body signals to a point where she gets injured. So, you know, definitely being able to listen into your own body and to what it's telling you, it tells us even more powerfully how important that is. And then also just being able to structure the world in such a way that, helps people with autism, sort of the kind of neurodiverse populations in general, to
I'm ready. If we've lost Julia. I think that we've lost Julia. So I think 100% agree with what Julia was saying. Elise is very articulate and is able to share her experiences, control her body. As she was saying that before, probably seeing autism as a disability, was to the point of needing the word autism in itself to have a code word, being tree, and that she always had 3 wishes around having friends, and probably saw autism as a deficit, but now sees it 100% as a strength. We'll go over maybe for a parent perspective. Kelly, do you have what are your initial thoughts after having the opportunity to listen to Elle and Julia and Elise? What are some of the take-home messages that you'll take from this?
You know, every time I listen to Elise speak, I just gain so much insight into what my son goes through on a daily basis. So I could listen to Elise talk all day long. She's just such an amazing human being. But I think she has some really powerful messages for people who don't really understand what it's like to live on the autism spectrum and how that can feel. And she just puts it in such a way that doesn't make us feel like we're terrible for not understanding, but just educating us. And just amazing, Elise. Absolutely amazing.
Love you, Kelly.
Okay, yeah.
Fabulous. Thank you, Kelly. Now we will go over, I'll ask Elle a question. Elle, I'm very curious because you've had some pretty big career changes as well as being a parent. So you've gone from the disability support sector to corrections and most recently into AFL. And within AFL, you've coached, you work as a development manager in the Eastern region, as well you coach in FIDA, and you've been chatting with some of the FIDA players this week, as you said, on social media. Do you have anything else to add about sort of their experiences, maybe part about some of the things that we can celebrate because it is World Autism Day, partly looking at all the awesome achievements, but also looking at, I guess maybe autism and FIDA. What are some of the opportunities and challenges?
Wow, that wasn't quite on the question sheet that you sent me, but so some of the focuses this week has been around some of the positive, so focusing on the positive stuff around sort of football. So a lot of them, so we started an Instagram page, so FIDA_football, and they've been sending in some of their favourite football moments. And then a lot of the participants have been sending me just a little bit of a story about themselves and how football has helped them sort of connect and make friends. I think Elise touched on that really well. And I found even my own daughter, you know, struggled with that about just wanting a friend. So rather than focusing on sort of them being sort of socially isolated, it's just around sort of celebrating what they've done. And now we've had a number of players that have been really lucky and they've represented their state in football, and a lot of them, I sort of have them in the winter, and then Kelly has them in the summer for cricket. So these are guys that are representing, I guess, in sports at the highest level as well. So really focusing on their achievements.
And Sean,
Thank you for that.
it's important to remember that this is like, some of this stuff is their whole life, like the sports that they play is everything that they do. So, it's really challenging time for these people to have that taken away from them, because that's their hyper focus, like Elise spoke about. So, like, I know even with our cricket boys, we're getting constant messages from them just not coping and not doing okay. So it's really important that we support that with them through this time as well.
Absolutely. And mental health is a really big concern. So sport and life training, they've been started some amazing webinars on Mondays and Wednesdays. So I've been steering a lot of our participants to that as well, where they can log in their lounge room and watch. And the feedback from that has been really good. And a lot of them are, as Kel said, really struggling from a mental health perspective as well during this time. So it's something that we really need to be cognizant of and ensure that we remain engaged with our participants as well, because when footy, hopefully, is back up in June, is that we want these participants to come back as well. We don't want them to completely disengage from sport, and it's a high risk period.
Exactly. It is a very high risk period that people of all different abilities have worked their butts off to get their foot in the door with clubs and teams and build up a schedule, get into a groove, overcome a lot of anxiety of trying something new. And now everyone's looking forward to winter sport. And that's all been everyone's curveball, and we don't want to lose anyone. We want to make sure that people stay active, stay engaged. Having those opportunities, I think, with social media to stay connected with teammates is really important, so that when we do get back to whatever normal is, back to our lives, that we can crack back into sport. And I think for many of us, sport has been an incredible opportunity to connect with people, to build up social friendships, given many of us jobs, careers. And so when all this is finished, you go back to normal. We just had a question that's come in online on Facebook. Not so much it's a question. Will the recording be available? So yes, the recording will sit on DSR TV as well. The recording will sit on AAA Play on the Facebook page and be available, because people are busy and they can't always attend live. So we'll be keeping them there with all of the faults and glitches for eternity, or until I decide we should delete it. But we will look to edit some of the great little talking bits down. And so the best way to stay in touch with everything is the AAA Play newsletter. And as new resources come up and we edit videos, we'll put that in there. One question, going over to Kelly, if I could. Kelly, certainly you started AAA Sports in Ballarat to support Cooper. Looking back, if you were to start all over again, or if you were to have advice for parents thinking about doing the same thing, maybe somewhere else in a medium to small or a large community, do you have 2 or 3 pieces of advice that you'd want to share?
Yeah, I think my advice would be, don't be afraid to do it. I think it can be a really scary thought to think, oh God, how am I going to run an all ability centre? There is so much support out there from the state sporting associations, from your local government, from myself, Elise. There's plenty of people out there to help you guys get this stuff set up. So if it's something that you want to do in your area, then reach out to the State Sporting Association of the sport that you want to start and get the ball rolling, because they're really keen to give you the support you need to get it up and running.
Thank you, Kelly. We've got a question that's come in from Jean from GIP Sport for Elle. You mentioned some sport organizations that are running that were running sessions. I probably missed what you had said. Do you know what Jean is asking about? Or we can connect you with Jean.
The Monday.
Yeah,
Elle,
absolutely.
I think it'll be the Monday.
Yeah,
the
so
Monday
there
online.
are some different individuals that are providing sort of support, so some online stuff. I've got some stuff that one of the VFL umpires has developed as well for some of the feeder players. I'm more than happy to sort of pass that on. The other resource even to have a look at is like the Coaching from Home, which is a Facebook group which Coach.afl set up as well. So a lot of coaches are putting online content on there. So I would encourage football participants to even have a look there themselves to get some tips and tricks for home. But yeah, no, more than happy to share. I've got sort of a list of different things.
Fantastic. And another fantastic resource. I mean, there's a lot of resources and a lot of people across Victoria that we haven't been able to highlight today. And so what we'll do with the AAA Play newsletter and send out an email to everybody that's registered, we'll have a list of these things. We'll have the speaker contact details, and we'll have links to programs like Pegasus, which is run by Disability Sport Victoria. We'll also include a link, and hopefully we can also do a little bit of a highlight of inclusive sport training led by Liz Gosper. I know today kind of a lot about cricket, a lot about AFL, some team sports stuff in there. But IST, a group of incredible athletes, running, walking, cycling, swimming, triathlon. Yep. So over the next few weeks, we'll highlight even more people. We had a question come in from DSR TV for Elise. Oh, but just as I've looked up, Elise is not there.
Sorry.
Are you there,
Sorry.
Elise? Sorry to surprise you. Elise Arnell is asking you, at what age at school did you start to feel different?
Well, I think prep and grade 1, I was content with being an observer. I started feeling, I was scared and shy, but I was content with being an observer because I didn't really understand. It was when my interest was sparked with sport that then I had something to focus on. I think that to paint probably a picture is, if I was looking at grass, I wasn't thinking, okay, grass. I'd be noticing all the different grass things moving. And if I was hearing, like if it was a truck, I'd be like, oh, it was really noisy. So I was almost too stimulated to be present. That's how almost I was disconnected. I was so connected that I was disconnected, if that makes sense. It was when I had something that I was captured through my sport where it made sense because everyone was following this one ball. And that was, I guess, Julia, kind of like mindful. Something that then helped me connect, but in a way that it took a step back from all the stimulation. It was when I realized all the kids are doing the same thing and I'm sitting here that's when I felt disconnected and I didn't know how to do it. And it was when people then asked me questions and I'd kind of hide behind my mum or hide behind, I didn't know how to, but then I was like, oh, my brain's not working. And then school having systems where I just didn't understand the question, but everyone else would laugh, not at me, at like a joke. And I wouldn't understand what the joke was. I realized that I was missing things. It was only though once I started to put myself out there and then getting people laughing at me through quite obvious things that then I was like, I'm different. It was when I wanted to do something and I couldn't, or I noticed that people were able to do things that I couldn't, was when I started to realize that I was different. And then I guess there's a period where you know how to do, you kind of get a happy medium where you don't put yourself out there enough that you have to do things that you don't know how to do. I guess that's a teenage bit of withdrawal and that. But then there was me. I was self-employed because it's like not probably the best person to employ, but realizing, okay, I normally, someone else ends the conversations for me. Like my mum would go, okay, cool. I shouldn't say that. So my mum would be like, all right, thanks for talking to me, blah, blah, blah. And I just go and follow her. But then in a social setting, because I missed it as a kid where the person would say, okay, do you want to say goodbye to that person? All of a sudden I was expected to do that and I didn't know how to do that. So it comes up, okay, no, I'm talking a lot. The question was at what point. It was quite early on and I'm reminded of it a lot, but I just need to skip the part of what it means about me and just go, okay, problem, solution. I get on waves, sorry.
No, it's perfect, Elise. It's perfect. It's always really introspective, I think, or insightful to understand sort of the way people's minds work and goes from one topic to the next and then gets around back to the original question. So I think around becoming self-aware, I believe maybe is the right words, and starting to realize like, it sounds like it was a gradual process, probably from early on. Starting to realize a little bit different from others. And then, as you said before, probably feeling, ashamed of it at first and guilty. And then, where now you see it as a superpower and see it as something really, really powerful and strong. I don't know if Kelly, Julia. Go ahead, Elise.
Sensory wise, that was probably the thing that I realized very, very early on is I used to be like this because I couldn't handle the feeling of my own skin and touching. So I used to be always like that. And my dad, whenever he was around his mates, would go like hands out, like basically don't do that. They didn't understand autism, so they were just trying to, I guess, probably protect me. And teach me how to be normal, but they were things that were really uncomfortable. So when there was a photo, it was like a hands, and then I'd go like that, and then go back to that. So, or if it was around people. So, I think when I was getting prompted to do things that my siblings weren't, I realized I was different. And when it was the talk with teachers was about needs, where for other of my siblings, they kind of just went in. That's when I realized it was different as well. So it was really early on.
And I think the thing, Sean, the thing about being an inclusive club is accepting that, sometimes these guys may need that space to clench their fists or to step back from the huddle, as Elise sometimes talks about, and not be involved in the huddle. So if we can all just use those adaptation techniques to be able to let people be their natural self, they will be able to exceed them. But we have to be able to let them be their natural self.
And absolutely, and I think that even goes beyond participants with a disability as well. It just goes for any participant.
Yeah, absolutely.
And in a lot of ways, it's the anxiety that makes my needs higher. So if I'm super anxious, I'm going in overdrive. If I'm super anxious, I'm going, oh no, I need my safety. And through desensitization, if I just get put in the deep end, I then create a fear about certain things. But if my strategy, which some people don't understand, but my strategy with my hands was to go and put my hands underwater and then do tasks as quickly as I can while my hands were still wet before they dried. That was just something that helped me. But if someone was to be like, no, you need to do it this particular way, I will start creating a fear and then not just withdraw, but push away from that.
I really like that. I think I probably could have done with that coming into today's webinar. Definitely created a higher level of anxiety.
For everybody. Julia, do you have a comment about maybe your experiences working with school-aged kids, probably who are becoming self-aware and some of the turmoil that can create?
Yeah, so I think that, like Elise already mentioned, the idea of the superpower. That's the approach I take. I quite often talk to the young people that come into my room about, okay, well, autism, it's a superpower, but every superhero has their kryptonite. So we go through it in that way. Like, what are these things that make you, like, that autism give you that I don't have as a neurotypical? But then where are you also going to find things a little bit difficult? Because that's the target of our therapy.
That's fabulous. We have a question that's come in on Facebook Live, and I recognize that probably today, as Elise said, we don't use those terms high functioning, low functioning. We quantify it in terms of support needs around language, social skills, awareness of safety, etc. So quantifying that stuff. And a question that's come in, and I recognize that probably today we can't cover the whole spectrum of autism, but we got a whole month to do it. So hopefully we have more of these. But what advice does the panel have for somebody who has high support needs and is a young person who's currently self-isolating? Who wants to go first?
It's tough.
You go, Alice. You go.
Elle, do you want?
Elise, I think this might be up your alley, I think.
Maybe. I kind of started with easier clients, or for me the approach was going to be more obvious, and then I kind of went, ooh, challenge, and keep going different ones. I remember I was working with a client, and Anthony's the one who I had permission to share before about he lost the weight. He at the time was nonverbal, and part of that was selective mute, but we end up learning that he does speak. I wasn't sure how much he was taking in, and I knew processing delay, and I knew how to speak, but I wasn't sure, so I wasn't getting anything from him. And accidentally my phone went off, very unprofessional ringtone, and then he started going, ah, and I was like, Anthony, my dude, because he reacted, and I realized that, or responded, and I realized that he can hear and he likes music. So my language the way I communicated to Anthony, who wasn't going to respond at that stage verbally with words, was going to be through music. So what I did was I chopped I used music to exercise with him, and each song had a sequence of movements. And so he'd learn arms up, arms down. These took many sessions, but now he can do burpees, sit-ups, and we don't actually need the music, but we have now the music as a bit of a reward. But burpees, sit-ups, push-ups, he can run. And it's really helped. Now the parents are doing OT because his brain is completely malleable, even though he's older than me. And he learned the movement of wiping his bum as well. So he got toilet trained. So I don't see from that. I didn't know much about when intellect, like So I was nervous, but the one thing that always is like, oh, what can about me rather than about him. So what do I need to change? Yep. And it's really simple. But the question was, so if he is self-isolating, create safety and create interest space to have it outside, and create smaller goals. So can you engage in communication with the person, and then go, can you come out to the laundry and speak to me while I do this? And if you don't really need to go outside, but you can create watch shows of that particular interest or documentaries, of people doing it outside and then create conversations, which is like kind of fueling the seed, a bit like Josh and the Lego of, oh, that would be a fun thing to do, rather than would you want to do that, because that's too far in the kind of steps. That would be a fun thing to do. And like really having the checkpoints. It's like someone in a wheelchair, you need a ramp, and it can't be too much, because then they'll roll down, and that wouldn't be good.
Thank you.
I agree.
Thank you, Elise.
Perfect.
I agree, Sean. I'd go back to basics. Just go right back to basics. Keep it simple and really easy, achievable steps. Doesn't have to be a full game of cricket or a full game of football to start off with. You know, start off with just really simple skills and gradually build on those. And if that takes 2 weeks, 6 months, that doesn't matter, but you're still getting the opportunity to teach them a new skill.
Thank you, Kelly. I'll just add in the caveat that we're like sport and recreation people. We're not really the NDIS, or we're not behavior analyst experts out there. We do our best in the footy fields, the cricket fields, and all of that. But for for the most part, I think what we do is we generalize skills that are being learned in a very safe and controlled environment, and then we generalize into something like the footy field, or we go from one-to-one swimming lessons to group swimming lessons. And in this case, with a home environment, ideally, you know, there should be a lot of different people in that support circle. Ideally, the NDIS and the right people, and especially professionals like Julia, who have gone from you know, a practice out in the community to being telehealth. And so ideally we can have some telehealth supports as well to help with things like daily schedules. For me, I feel like I'm going one day at a time. Ideally, you know, we just don't know when things will go back to normal. But for some people, that daily schedule could be more visual, and it might be shorter, more manageable chunks, as Elise mentioned. Julia, did you have anything to add to that?
No, I think everybody's covered the sort of 2 points that immediately sprung to my mind, which are firstly, keeping it simple, and secondly, having fun with it. I think that's been beautifully summarized.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna
one thing that there's been times when I've been housebound, and it's also, I think, linked to desensitization of the more that I spend indoors, I then genuinely become scared and need one of my friends to come out with me. And also, the thing that I normally tell myself, if someone reminds me, is energy isn't a prerequisite for energy. So if you don't have the energy, or if you're scared, it's not the thing that you need to do an activity that gives you energy. And trust me, as soon as I go outside and I'm playing ball, I've got energy then, and I feel really good. I don't need that friend, apart from the fact that I do enjoy spending time with them, and that's probably where I need them. And the other thing is that there was another thing, but I can't remember.
That's cool. I'll just say one thing before I forget, and we'll come back to Elise if she remembers what she was going to say. But one of the things that Elise was talking about is before about the way that some people will move their hands. Go for it, Elise, if you remember. Jump in. Core
beliefs, challenging perceptions. So I tend to generalize and say all things are this way, or I can't because ... And sometimes we don't. Well, initially you might think that you don't want to engage in that and you don't want to manifest that, but I actually can get prompted out of that. So by acknowledging whatever I say and then asking the question of, is it all? And like, I hear that you're saying that that you find that difficult. Has it always been like that? So kind of prompting is what I use with my clients, of genuinely acknowledge that that's the reality for them. And then is there different parts of the reality that they're not noticing, and bringing that in? Because if I was just to say, I could do it so you could do it, that wouldn't work, because I've actually been where that was the truth, is that I couldn't go outside because I wasn't bringing other thoughts into that reality. And then all of a sudden you can get outside.
I think that's incredible. I think as you're talking, it makes me think about what a true partnership is, that it's not just about expecting somebody with autism to change. And it reminds me of Amaze's amazing, incredible public awareness campaign right now called Change Your Reactions. And so it's not just for people with autism to change by any means, as Elise was saying before about what we call self-stimulatory behavior or stims, and as anxiety increases, so too do stims. But we're in it together, and Amaze has an incredible public service campaign, Change Your Reactions. I think we've covered all the questions that have come in online. I will very quickly just refresh my email. There's been no new private questions come in. And so I just want to quickly wave goodbye and thank all of the speakers today. As I said at the beginning and halfway through, we came together with less than 6 days notice. The only reason we can do this is because we have incredible people, an amazing foundation of knowledge and strength to build on. So a huge thank you to you all. And then we'll wave goodbye to you guys, and then I'll do my final wrap up. So thank you all. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
All righty. We are into the home stretch. Thank you everybody for spending your afternoon with us. Definitely this is recorded, and you can send your questions through. If you think of something next week, send it through to me. I seem to have lost my screen share option, which is fine, I suppose. We'll not be sharing the final PowerPoint slide, but the final PowerPoint slide is just a slide that says thank you anyways. And so just a really big thank you once again to the speakers. They did an incredible job, very generous with their time. They're extremely generous with sharing their insights. It's certainly not easy. They were very brave, very open to failure and giving it a go, knowing that hopefully it will help somebody who's at home listening and create a connection. And as well, we sure do have a lot to celebrate as it relates to World Autism Day. We still have a lot of work to do, but as I said, we're kicking goals with increased levels of athletic participation, greater opportunities for spectator participation with the option of sensory rooms at multiple stadiums now. And then going forward within the Department of Jobs, precincts and regions, of course, we have a huge focus on economic inclusion for everybody. And there's just so many valuable skills that people with autism have to offer that they can be a huge benefit across the sport and recreation community. You heard Elise talk about neurodiversity and neurotypicals, and I suppose that sometimes we talk about normal, but we don't really know what normal is. And I saw a great thing, I think, on the Autism Swim social media, that normal is only a setting on the washing machine. And so I want to thank Elise, especially sharing her neurodiverse insights with us, and really being open, and all of the speakers very vulnerable in this new sort of time that we're in, and sharing their ideas and being very vulnerable with all the quirks of technology. I want to thank you for tuning in for the last 2 and a bit hours. It's been, well, coming up to 3 hours now. So absolutely incredible to have some interaction online. Learning curve for all of us, speaking into our microphones and laptops. I suppose we have to get a lot better to one day be more like Waleed Ali and Carrie Bickmore. Thank you to the captioning studio. Absolutely mind-blowing how they can type 200 words per minute and keep up with all the back and forth conversation. A huge appreciation for everything Mandy and the captioning studio are doing for us right now. A huge thank you to My Sport Live, Dale, Andrew, and Gideon supporting us through these last 6 days, especially today. We had some technical glitches, certainly for Elise and myself, Julia, and then there was even more stuff going on behind the scenes. But thanks for being so calm and cool and helping us through this. A big thank you again to DSR TV, AAA Play, Aiden, Melanie, Sam and Seth, and all the team behind them. It's amazing that we can have this technology, make it more accessible, and allowing it to be on demand as well for everybody. A big thank you to the team at Sport and Recreation Victoria. The only way that I can do these things on short notice is that everyone else in the team does a whole lot more stuff behind the scenes. And a big thank you. There's a big contingent of SRV team members who have joined a COVID-19 response team, which has made what is left of our team even busier. So a big thank you to Tim, Michelle, Rachel, Jason, Adam, and everyone who I've always chatted with and rely on as we flesh through these ideas. Thank you to Ron Prasad for coming on late and doing the acknowledgement of country. Ron is certainly an articulate speaker, incredible, and I felt it was very valuable knowing the work that Ron does in the community around anti-bullying, and knowing that unfortunately a lot of people with autism have experienced bullying. I thought that was a really nice connection for the two of them. Lastly, a really big thank you. As I threw up a slide early on in the beginning, we're only here really because of the foundation that's been built by parents of people with autism throughout the 50s and 60s, and by autistic advocates that they've built through the 60s, 70s, 80s, and through to today. Because of the work that you've done, professionals like myself have an excellent platform to work from. And so a huge thank you for pushing the benefits and the strengths base of neurodiversity. As you push for better and for more inclusion and celebrate neurodiverse people, you don't just make the world better for yourself, you certainly make it better for everybody else and everyone who follows after you. Thank you to those who have watched online, and thank you for spending your time with us. Take care.
Hi, I'm Richard Amon. Thanks for joining DSR TV, a showcase of inclusive sport. Hope you enjoyed today's action, seeing what's possible for people with disability playing sport. You can catch up a lot of action on our website, www.dsr.org.au, for a whole host of past episodes of DSR TV to see inclusive sport for people with a disability.
Get over the top of Anderson. Cracks all the way back in. It does. And he's locked him!